Hello YouTube modelers, welcome back to my channel. I want to thank all my viewers and subscribers for tuning in. Today will be another revisit video. It is a revisit of a past build of mine. It is the Testors 148 scale SR-71 Blackbird. My wife, who was my girlfriend then, knew I liked models, so she bought this at Job Lot or Odd Lot. Those of you familiar with New York City, it's similar to an Ollie's, but they don't always have models as frequent as Ollie's. Now those companies have been rolled up into Big Lots, but I don't think they really sell models that much. But occasionally they do sell models, and this one time they had the Testors kit. They sold it as the big spy plane kit or super spy plane kit. Basically, it was an all-inclusive package that included the base Testors SR-71, and then included all the regular accessories that Testors usually puts in, like the plastic mat, the generic brush, all the flat paints that you needed to complete this kit. And for the first time, they actually threw in 2 spray cans of gloss black and 1 can of dull coat. And that's how I learned how to spray and put decals on first and then coat over it with a coat of dull coat. So even though it was originally gloss black, that helps with decal adhesion, and then you spray it over with dull coat. So even though it started out as gloss black, it looks flat black now. So similar to like the Model T or the Buick Grand National, I've mostly seen them in black, even though you can spray them in silver finish. But this was my first large scale 148 scale plane, because I usually started out with 172 scale, and then when I moved up to 148, it was mostly like single pilot planes. But this one, it's around 26 inches long, and it's around 14 or 15 inches wide. It's not that wide because it's pretty much like a pancake. So when I pulled it out of storage, the 2 things that broke was the pitot tube in the front. I don't know if this is the correct one. It was the only piece I found on the bottom of the box, but I think this one should have a primary and secondary pitot tube, which looks like a fork, right? One long and one short. One branches out from the side. I think I can buy them aftermarket because they make them for the Revell 148 scale, the new one. And then these 2 rudders broke, and they're kind of fragile because they had a tab that goes into the engine, the cells, but then it broke right at the tab, so it's basically a flush joint now, which isn't as strong. I didn't feel like pinning it. So this kit I found to be easy to assemble, and it looks good. The fuselage halves is basically consisting of, let's look at the portions. Consists of 1, 2, 3. The largest portion is this one, so it's 4, and then the tail piece, which is 5. You can kind of tell from the joints. This one, the joint is just a little bit too wide, but everything else kind of fits not too bad. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It consists of 5 pieces that you join together to form the long fuselage. And there's an upper half and a lower half, and that's beneficial because when you join it, the seam line is right on the edge. So if you join them correctly, you hardly see it, because usually the seam line is right down the back or the center, and you know I hate to work on seam lines. So 5 pieces, seam line is on the edge, so it's perfect. I didn't have any problems, no flashing, no fit issues. It fit perfectly. In comparison to the new tooling like that just came out 2 years ago from Revell, the 148 scale, I think Joe over at Mad Genius, he was working on it as a buddy build, and he said that there was a lot of flashing, and he had joint issues where there was gaps so big you could see right through them. So I didn't quite have that problem. I mean, I did lay the glue a little heavy for the 2 rudders because I had to glue them back without a working tab or pin to anchor them down. So I might have maybe oozed a little bit glue out, but for the most part you can tell the joints aren't too bad, except for this one. This one is rather wide, but I don't really mind, because if you ever dig into the history of this SR-71, this plane flies basically over 3 times the speed of sound, which is like maybe 3.2. It flies at 85,000 feet and higher. They say it can fly up to 100,000 feet, but its operating altitude is pretty much 85,000 feet. It flies so fast that basically the canopy windows heat up to I think 600 degrees, which is pretty hot. You can cook dinner on it. So I think the glass panels are very thick, so it's very hot. So when those panels get very hot, they expand, just like the expansion joints on a highway. You know, there's like a couple of inch gap, and then during the summertime they expand and they seal up. So supposedly there are joints with gaps in them on purpose, and even when you refuel them on the ground, they supposedly leak, and then when you take it up in the air and the metal starts to expand, everything fills up nicely. So I don't really mind that one gap. I also pulled this plane out because I had mentioned to John over at Mopar Nut 62, because he's building the Revell 172 scale, and that plane is a little bit smaller, but basically the same plane. According to ScaleMates, even though this was released by Testors, it is supposedly an Italy kit. I don't know, because it didn't say that on the box. It just said Testors. It was the typical yellow bordered box. I mean, I think the kit was fine. This is a fine design by Kelly Johnson over at Lockheed. The decals, they gave you a choice of either this operated plane during Vietnam called Ichiban with a snake, and these snakes supposedly represent the completed missions. There is a detailed canopy, which I did my best to detail paint, but my biggest pet peeves, if you guys know me from now, for now, is they did not include the pilot. And that's one thing I really wish they had done. The problem is I can't just stick any pilot in there, because usually the pilots wear gear that's similar to astronauts, because this pretty much goes, it's kind of like a in between a high-flying airplane and a spacecraft. So they wear pretty heavy gear. So you're gonna have to need figures that kind of look like a astronaut. But anyway, I just stuck on something that looked like a pitot tube, but I think that's the incorrect one. Usually those are the first ones to break on an airplane. The canopy, I raised it, and they give you a decent amount of decals. The warning ones, the walkways on the wing, the no step, the danger, everything blended in pretty well. The black paint, I think, went well, especially with the coat of dull coat. This thing is huge because it takes the whole width of my desk. Okay, engine detail, not the greatest. You can see some turbofan detail from the back. I hear the new kit is a little bit more detailed from Revell, the 148 scale, even though Joe had complained about the flashing and the fit issues. Over here, so big it barely fits on a turntable. There's some joint issues. They do include the two Pratt & Whitney J58 engines, so you can build them as a display. Let me fix this because this just barely fits on the turntable, the wheels. So it's a nice looking plane. I mean, it's so well designed, and this is designed before CAD or computers. Everyone had to use the old calculations and the slide rulers and manually compute stuff, but pretty advanced plane. Even the looks of it looks, even if this was up in the air, it would look contemporary. That's how advanced this plane looks. If you guys are into advanced planes and technology, you should definitely research this plane. The plane is made of a lot of titanium, and I heard that they had to create a lot of small shell companies to buy from Russia titanium, because a lot of titanium in Japan and Russia, and that way they wouldn't suspect anything. So the plane uses titanium, which they use for spacecraft. The intake cone here, it retracts and extends based on how fast the plane is going. So it gives it the most efficient airflow so that it will not destroy the engine, the shockwave. It's basically an engine that runs on afterburner all the time, as opposed to just occasionally, but it's so well designed, it operates like a ramjet, similar to, if you guys are into muscle cars, when you connect an air hose to a headlight that's been removed and you just feed it straight into the engine, the faster it goes, the more air gets rammed into the engine. So same technology, you know, it adjusts for the best airflow so it doesn't destroy the engine for the shock waves, but yet the faster it goes, the more efficient the compression and the airflow. And basically it does burn a lot of fuel, but not as bad as a regular jet because of that ram air technology. But basically it's running on afterburners all the time. But flying at Mach 3.2 and at 85,000 feet, by the time people detect you and they plot the firing solution, they launch the missiles, you're so high up and you fly so fast, you're already out of the airspace, so there's nothing they can do. So let me pause the video and then I'll flip it over because I have a lot of delicate pieces sticking up, like the canopy and the tail rudder. Okay, so this is the underbelly, or the bottom of the plane. It has the large camera windows because it is a spy plane, so it takes pictures. This is before digital cameras, so we're talking about the old film. So they would take the pictures, and the negatives were pretty large. I think they rival a room carpet or floor mat. I mean, the negatives are so big because by the time they blow up the pictures could be as large as a room carpet, so that analysts can take a look at it and see whether those are really missiles that they're building in Cuba or not. So things like that. It's interesting reading up on this plane. They fill the tires up with nitrogen, even though now that's given, because even when you go to Costco, they will fill your car tires up with nitrogen, because nitrogen doesn't deviate as much in pressure in hot and cold, because like I said, the plane gets very, very hot flying at top speed because of the surface friction of the air. But the bottom is cleaner and crisper because at one time I had this displayed on my shelf, so the top got very dusty. But I mean, pretty much it's a simple kit, not much detail, but the shell or the external components look good. And that's pretty much it. So I'm going to have stills at the end. John, I hope you enjoyed this video. Sometimes there's lots of kit choices I can choose to pull out for a revisit, but I will pull them out or put some before others based on if someone in the community happens to be building something similar or might find it of interest. So I will probably hang this one up or put it back into storage, but it's a good build. So if you guys don't want to spend $100 on the new Revell 148 new tooling, then you might want to look at this old Testors kit in whatever form you can get it, whether it's the base kit or get it as a all-inclusive with modeling supplies. But come to think of it, if it's an old kit, it's possible the paint might be all dried out and might be all ruined, so I guess just look for the basic kit. But I have seen these still readily available sometimes on auction or on the secondary market. So hope you guys enjoy this. This is another prized large-scale 148 military plane build of mine, and I will have stills at the end, so thanks for watching. I knew I forgot to mention this, but they do provide parts if you want. They do provide parts to cover the second cockpit opening if you just want to build a single seat CIA A12 plane, or the raised humpback or bulge for the second cockpit for the SR-71B version, which has the raised cockpit, second cockpit. But this is the SR-71A version, but they do provide it for the B or for the A12 CIA spy plane. And also the decals, they also provide the Lockheed Skunk Works, which is their top secret division, so it has the skunk on it, or I chose the Ichiban, which is the operational name for one of the planes. But they do provide a Skunk Works decal, which I found the other day, and now I can't find it in time for this video, and now it's going to bother me until I find it. But anyway, just want to mention that, so here comes the pics.